So today is voting day. I hope you've all been out and cast your votes. There is still time if you haven't done so already. Like I say, you've got until 10 o'clock, so get moving if you haven't voted already. um, but of course, we will be going live later today, about 9:30 this evening, to sort of watch some of the results. We'll have a look at the exit polls, what they've got to say, anything that sort of pops up during that time. We will stream as long as we can. Like I say, after I've done my today's videos, later I will be going to have a little power nap for later to pep myself up for later. But oh my word, I was spoilt for choice about what I wanted to do today, and I still might do it. Um, we've covered Will Atkinson a lot on Conservative Home. He's our favorite Conservative Home T-boy, a young conservative who just a couple of days ago asked the question, "Are we the baddies?" and then proceeded to go, if only like 2020 hadn't happened, if the pandemic hadn't happened, if all those scandals hadn't happened, we'd be fine right now. We wouldn't be, because we'd still having to deal with the consequences of, Tory policy, and the fact that continuously, as we have seen, as you will have seen from my Daniel Hanan video as well, they cannot look back seriously on 14 years and not actually identify why they are not liked, why they are so hated, what actually went wrong with their party. And more importantly, they can't even say, well, actually, our policies weren't actually that good and did a lot of harm to the country. You are going to see very, very few honest Tories in the next couple of days, and you are going to see a cottage industry, as I said in the Daniel Hanan video, a mountain, an absolute mountain of articles, just as we covered with Daniel Hanan, asking the question, what went wrong? And I'll tell you what, I nearly decided today to do the post on Conservative Home that Will has done today, because he is doomering. He is doomering so hard. And he is doing exactly what many conservatives did after 1997. That, oh, don't worry, we just have to sit back and watch Labour fail. And that somehow next election will be back in, guys. It'll just be a one-term Labour government, and we'll be right back in there, guys. How long did it take the Conservatives to regain power after 1997? Yeah, they cannot, and they are incapable, absolutely incapable of any serious introspection on this. And now I was going to do that, and then I saw this, the one we're going to go over today, and I think, oh boy, if they think this is the quote right direction to go, as I keep on saying, a part of the Tory civil war is going to be, do they accept Farage? Because Farage, who knows? Maybe this evening we'll find out whether or not he is in Parliament. But there is going to be a significant push, whether he wins or not, to get Farage into the Conservative Party. And oh boy, will that kick off a whole other chain of events. But we'll see what happens, in the future if that happens. But before we go diving into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's the Patreon page. There's a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. There's the Pony Club down below as well. And thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel. Even if you do, just click the like and share button. Thank you so much for all the help and support that you guys have, you guys show. And of course, like I say, Tory civil war. Oh my word. It is almost upon us. It's finally here. And oh boy, is it going to be fun. And as I said, Nigel Farage going to be at least a prominent part of this Tory civil war in some way, shape, or form. We'll see how it all ends up shaping out. But trust me, There is going to be a fight over whether or not to accept Farage. And if they do accept Farage, that's going to open up a whole other can of worms for the Conservative Party. But we'll see if that happens. But on to this, because this, again, quite funny article in many ways. So this is by a guy called Piers Mackenzie Baker, and he says the Conservatives need Farage if they want a new generation of voters. And I have never seen this. I have never seen this before. Because of all the stuff that we have read over the years on Conservative Home, I have never seen them put this on. And that is, the views expressed in this article are the author's own. I have never, ever seen them do that for any other article. So instantly, I knew this must be a gold mine. But if you don't know who this guy is, it's okay. He is apparently a young Conservative Party activist and previously stood in the 2023 local elections in his home ward in Kent. So let's see what he's got to say about this. So, the words Generation Z and Millennial are not commonly associated with the right of British politics. Indeed, look at the recent polling of this age group's voting intentions. A shocking 81% plan to back left-wing offerings of either Labour or the Liberal Democrats or the Greens at the general election. Remember that, what he's just said. 81% of Gen Z and millennials intend to back left-wing parties. 81%. Bear that in mind. Just pin that in your mind and just put it somewhere else for later. That point's going to become pretty important later on, where he's about to say some other stuff. So, paired with the fact that the only demographic giving major support to the Conservatives now is the over 65s, and the party seems in real danger of entering a political graveyard. These numbers should be terrifying for any Tory strategist and astute enough to look at the long term, but fortunately, they only paint half the picture. Bear in mind, he's right. We've brought this up before, that the Tories are going to die a death of demographics because their only support is coming from the over 65s. That is not good. That is not good for the long-term health of a political party. More importantly, that number of over 65s, increasingly less and less, shall we say, Conservatives are joining that. Turns out more people are not turning Conservative as they get older. And there was a big panic, if you may remember, when we covered that, almost over a year ago on Conservative Home. Like, what should we do? And bear in mind, there have been a number of articles on Conservative Home panicking about how they get younger voters. Again, another fact that in the Tory Civil War, they ain't going to be able to answer. But this guy's answer is, we just need Nigel Farage. And somehow Nigel Farage is going to appeal to Gen Z and millennials. But we'll get to that point later. Anyway, in America and across Europe, we are now seeing young voters turn rightwards, rebelling against years of centrism. The EU election resulted in a tidal wave of support for parties principally proposing much stringent controls on immigration, but also radical economic and social breaks from the establishment consensus. Yes, there has been some young voters that have moved rightwards. However, it is not the tidal wave, shall we say, I think this guy is sort of making out to be. He continues, though. A third of young French voters voted for the Rassemblement National, and it now looks like the energetic 28-year-old's Jordan Bardella might be their new prime minister. And of course, bear in mind, if they ever do get in, they're going to have huge problems. They are not going to solve everything. If it ends up being what's called cohabitation government that they have in France, the right wing are going to have huge problems trying to get anything done. And of course, they'll blame it on centrists, etc. But even if they get full power, they're going to have their own problems because, as we've seen, any other right wing government that gets in, what happens? they end up failing, because it turns out when you actually have power, it's not as easy and as simplistic as they make it out to be, trying to solve all these simple problems. Turns out being government is actually quite complicated. But there you go. Germany's Alternative for Deutschland, or the ADF, saw its support rise by 11% amongst voters aged 24 to 30. What was it originally? If it rose by 11%, it would be funny if someone from Germany could actually tell me, did that rise from like 0 and now it's like 11%? Because he's not actually saying what the original number was. But I can't help but wonder why. I'm sure someone from Germany will enlighten us on that. And of course, on the other side of the pond, Trump heavily looks likely to make a return to the White House, with polls showing him to making significant gains with young Americans. So, why does this not appear to be happening in Britain? Probably because the youth have actually lived through 14 years of Tory austerity and really realize that, you guys are the problem, that you haven't done really anything to help the youth or anything of that. Is this guy going to talk about policies or anything like that? No, he's about to talk about why apparently Nigel Farage is the guy that we need to somehow attract Gen Z and millennials to the Conservative Party. That seems pretty insane to me, but there you go. Anyway, so although pollsters have yet to detect it, there is a movement of ground which suggests that might be about to. Remember, guys, keep that point there that 81% of young people are going to vote for left-wing parties, because that's going to become pretty important very soon, because it's going to destroy this guy's own argument. So, Nigel Farage's return to the leader of Reform UK has now thrown a political hand grenade into the election. The Brexit backing voters we won in 2019 and are wavering, and now attracted by his appeal for revolting against the system. Bear in mind, not all of those 2019 voters are voting for Farage. He gets that wrong. That 2019 intake are not all going to vote for Farage. A lot of them are switching back to their original parties, from what we can see. But hey, there you go. From what, of course, is now more interesting is the growing support amongst the younger generations. Reform are now spending very little on their campaign funds on social media spending only about £12,000 on Facebook ads in comparison to the Conservative Party's over £900,000. Despite this, they are now dominating discussion on all platforms, and Farage's foray into TikTok apps, now predominantly used by 18 to 24-year-olds, has already garnered him over 10.3 million likes and over 500,000 followers. Meanwhile, neither the Conservatives nor Labour have anything close to resembling those numbers. And how many of those are bots? Because I have a very sneaking suspicion that after this election, the view count of Nigel Farage's TikTok following is going to just completely almost fall off a cliff. But we shall see. So it continues. This social media success, again, it's not really success, because again, you've got to translate that into votes. Doesn't seem, we'll find out, or very soon, how much that has, quote, translated into votes and how much that success has been. But I don't think it's as big as he's saying. The party is now explained by the gaggle of new Zoomer advisors now shaping Farage's communication strategy. Remember, he is now saying that all this, bear in mind, 81% of young people voting for left-wing parties this election. But, Farage is really popular, guys, amongst this demographic. He's totally popular, guys. Trust me, he's really popular. The 81%, which he started off this article with, are not going to be voting for Farage's party or right-wing parties. They're going to be voting for left-wing parties. But trust me, guys, really popular. And that's why we have to let Farage into the Conservative Party. This argument holds no weight whatsoever when he's already deployed a statistic which pretty much shows Farage ain't as popular as he is claiming to be amongst this demographic. But back to it. But this is now only half of the story. From Eminem remixes to Minecraft memes, there is now an army of keyboard warriors on X, formerly Twitter, churning out free advertising for reform. Is it, quote, free advertising, or is it just more bot farming? Seems to me like it's bots, especially on Twitter, which we know now, under Elon Musk, has a massive bot problem. Massive bot problem. So again, I don't think those, shall we say, are going to last either post the election. But it continues. This now does not appear to be a swarm of bots. Yeah, evidence, I think, will probably suggest otherwise, because we'll probably get after a lot of people look into that. And it wouldn't surprise me if we do find out that to be the case. He says the money is not there for that. And it's too spontaneous and uncoordinated. Sure. It's just too spontaneous and uncoordinated that just from this period in time, all these people just happened to start posting about Farage and sharing all these memes. Just totally spontaneous and uncoordinated, guys. It does appear to be the beginnings of an organic movement from an internet savvy but socially conservative generation. A socially conservative generation. 81% of millennials and Zoomers, and Gen Zs are going to be voting for left-wing parties. But don't worry, guys, they're all just internet savvy and totally socially conservative. Yeah, this guy's a bit clueless, I think. He's been drinking the Kool-Aid too much, methinks. So, God, this just seems. This is the Simpsons meme that we saw a few days ago. Why, gee, Mr. Burns, your campaign has been described as a runaway success. Honestly, this is what he's asking. Why are young people flocking to Farage's message? I don't think they are, but especially when you've just said 81% of people are voting for left-wing parties. Anyway, conversations with friends and colleagues of my age group who all have loyally voted Conservative in the past and now wavering, now have given me a few clues. So basically, all his friends who are also young Conservatives. What a sample size that is. Anyway, in recent speeches, Farage has managed to articulate the growing dissatisfaction my generation feels with the present system. We are increasingly hard-pressed by a crisis in the cost of living, squeezed by higher rents, minimal savings, and with very little hope of ever buying our own homes. So, what's Farage's policy prescription to solve that? Because he ain't building homes. His idea is we just stop immigration and somehow that alleviates the pressure on the housing market. Again, policy magic. Oh. So he continues, whilst 4.9 million adult children are now stuck home living with their parents, migration is at record levels, putting further pressure on housing demands. That is a tiny demand on that natural housing. Like, immigration is a really tiny demand. It's not the main housing pressure. It's people living here in the UK and just how expensive now housing is because of the idea of you buy a house at this price, then you must sell it at like 20-30% extra. And then when someone buys that house at the inflated cost of 20 or 30% extra, you must then sell it at 20 or 30% extra. This is a cycle that just cannot continue. But there you go. It's something we really, really need to have a big think about in this country, but we'll see what happens in the future. This link with population explosion is now undeniable mathematics. Of course it is. Anyway, on top of all the economic pressure, the far left woke thinking now permeates into all our main institutions and tells us that we are either assigned privilege or victimhood at birth based on factors we have no control over. We are unhappy, poor, and feel penalized in a society in decline. And that's what Farage is selling. That's his narrative. Um, but if anything, the real narrative is we have had 14 years of a government that just has not helped out in any way, shape, or form any of these people. It hasn't alleviated any concerns of young people, hasn't even tried to even fix the housing crisis. When we did Brexit, immigration went spiraling up. When, people like your guy, Farage, who were saying, oh, don't worry, if we leave the EU, immigration will go down. Are you going to bring up those chestnuts of wisdom that Farage himself brought up? No, don't think so. Anyway, what follows on this is a question of which is now arguably the most important of all and concerns our very future. On all our minds and is the worry of how we can expected to create families of our own in these conditions. Not everyone wants to make families. You are actually seeing more and more people maybe getting married but not wanting to have children. That is an increasing factor that we are seeing in a lot of generation of millennials and Gen Zs. He is pointing at this from a very, very conservative sort of worldview. He is not of that generation. He has a very warped view of his own generation, I think. But there you go. It has obviously traditionally been a core conservative principle to uphold the family. Well, so much for that when, they went and attacked Keir Starmer, making time and plans to, spend with his family. I wonder what he's got to say anything about that. But we have not done enough. It's not that you haven't done enough, you've done nothing. It was therefore incredibly refreshing to hear Farage speak very frankly about the importance of supporting families at the last leaders' debate. Conservatives should be taking a leaf from his book on this and be open now to reviewing the two-child benefit cap. More generally, we must consider pro-natalist policies, such as tax incentives to encourage marriage, childbirth, and greater childcare support. Well, guess what? You could have been doing that for the last 14 years. You chose not to do that. Indeed, when reviewing, reforms contract, the contract, which, bear in mind, makes Liz Truss's mini budget look like an economic blip if reform were to go through with it. I've described it as it's what would happen if you gave Liz Truss a bunch of E numbers. She'd be bouncing off the walls. This is probably what she would come up with. Look how well that turned out. But anyway, it's reforms contract with voters. There is really sort of very little that would have been out of place in a very traditional Conservative Party manifesto. It has always been our goal to allow people to keep more of their own money and lifting the income of tax threshold from 12 to 20,000. This is an exciting proposal. A freeze on non-essential immigration may prove harder to implement in practice, but the ambition of drastically lowering the numbers of people entering this country has been promised by all Conservative manifestos since 2010. And what did they actually do to the Home Office? Because this is what many Conservatives ignore. What did they do to the Home Office when they got into power? They absolutely gutted all the immigration stuff that would have helped alleviate this. The backlog of people stuck in the asylum system. They made the problem infinitely worse. And bear in mind, just a quick aside, I have seen a lot of quote Theresa May rehabilitation posts going on, um, saying like how wonderful Theresa May and what a terrific prime minister was. We must not forget Theresa May was responsible, for really destroying the Home Office and the asylum system to begin with. We cannot let her off the hook of that. So do remember that if you see those types of posts, because I have been noticing quite a few of them very recently. Um, so related to all this is the Prime Minister himself has now indicated that if leaving the European Court of Human Rights is the only way to finally control illegal immigration, then we must be prepared to do so. And again, there would be big consequences for doing that. Big economic consequences. And bear in mind, does this guy actually want to follow through on those economic consequences? Because remember, he is being told by people like Farage that when we did Brexit, there would be no negative economic consequences and it would all be fantastic rainbows and future and honey and jam tomorrow. That has not happened. And yet, spreading the same message about the European Court of Human Rights, gee, wonder totally nothing could go wrong from leaving that, right? After Farage's promises about Brexit. Anyway, continues. It is wrong to characterize Farage as anti-conservative. Arguably, the party has now drifted away to the progressive centre from when he was a member in the 1980s. Whilst we don't have to agree with everything Farage says, such as his recent comments on the causes of the Ukraine war, gee, hand washing that away, right? Hand washing those comments away, right? When it all boils down to core principles, there is much more we do agree on. Some of his ideas already have a home in the party in the form of the recent groupings trying to carry out the next, crying out for the different directions, such as the new Conservatives, the Popcons, and particularly the next gen Tories. But these groups, what these groups lack is a charismatic leadership to attract a whole new generation of right-minded voters, as Farage is doing. The new Conservatives, the Popcons, and quote, this is the next gen Tories. Jesus. All I can think now is like really young Conservatives in like really bizarre Star Trek uniforms. But never heard of them before this one, so a new group. But all these guys, all they would do is they would fall into this populist Conservatives. They would follow the exact same route that Liz Truss would do, hardcore following the ideology. And when things started to go wrong, as they would do, as we saw with Liz Truss, it could end up going really, really bad. I mean, bear in mind, I think it's both of them, but I'm pretty certain the Popcons have talked about taking away powers from the Bank of England. And remember, it was the Bank of England that stepped in when pension companies were an hour away from going bankrupt. And that would have been an absolute disaster if they had not done so. So imagine the Bank of England not having that power to intervene in something as catastrophic as pension companies going bust. You think it's bad now with what Liz Truss did? could have been infinitely worse. Infinitely worse. And bear in mind, Farage's contract with voters is like Truss's mini budget written by, I don't know, Speedy Gonzales, because I'll tell you what, they would crash the economy faster than Liz Truss. Anyway, it is now no longer a minority position to welcome Farage back into the fold. Yeah, no longer a minority position. As Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, all senior voices on the right, have all called for this. Although they are now shy on the subject now, I do suspect a great deal of party members and activists would secretly welcome it too. Oh boy! What a can of worms that would open. That, if you think the Tory war is going to really exemplify the splits that we've seen in the Tory party, I think if they welcome Farage, like, the Tory party will split. I really do believe that if they welcome Farage, the Tory party will split into two. I can guarantee you that now. So, at the moment, what will happen at the election is now unclear. But if Farage is proved anything of the last few years, that he is not going to go away. Should there be a Labour government, the country cannot afford to have a divided opposition. We need Farage's magic to attract, excite, and retain the young. Bear in mind, he has just said 81% of those young voters that apparently Farage is, attracting are going to go vote for left-wing parties. Don't think Farage is as popular with the youth as you are saying, my friends. If we don't, we will fail to overcome this stark generation divide, and then we now risk becoming a party of aging pensioners that is dwindling on its relevance and the right being completely out of power for decades. God, that would be fantastic. And of course, let's have a look into this. So, someone from here. Reform did not sue Channel 4 for concocting a false report. They were banged to rights. That's why. So, for the benefits of their educationally subnormal supporters, they kicked up a big media fuss, but then, when very meekly went to the Ofcom to lodge a complaint, which was so feeble it got thrown out in days. Following Farage will make out a fool of you in the end. Again, very interesting that. So, someone else says, is it the message or the messenger? I think it's the former. The Tories have done very little for young people. My two kids can vote for the first time in the GE today. They certainly won't be voting Tory. Is Farage the Messiah? I doubt it. He is a political loner who rides roughshod over friends and foes alike. And his platform is one of protest, not a coherent program for governing. There is no doubt a vocal minority of young people who really like Farage, but there is a much larger set who strongly dislike him. Someone else who brings this up. Piers starts off by saying that 81% of young people will vote for left-leaning parties, and then spends the rest of the piece stating how popular Farage is with young people. Just I know. I read that, and I remember reading the rest of this and just like, everything you're saying here, but he's really popular on TikTok. But you've just said 81% of young people are going to be voting for left-wing parties. And then someone else here, the Conservatives need voters backing Farage and centrists who have switched to Labour and the Lib Dems to win under first past the post. He's not wrong. Stupid boy. I think that sums up the comment perfectly. And then this is the last one. The Conservatives need Farage like the lettuces on your allotment need a visit from a herd of slugs. Um, yeah, something tells me this guy is probably not going to be writing too many more articles from Conservative Home. Who knows? Maybe he will in the future. But I will say this now before we end. I have never seen them add this tag before. You know, the views of this article expressed in this are the author's own. I have never ever seen them put that in an article before. But hey, don't get me wrong, whether Farage loses today or tomorrow, whatever happens, he will play some part in the coming Tory civil war. That I can guarantee you. There will be a whole Farage saga. If you ever know anything about the 30 Years' War, it starts off as like um the Austrian phase, then it goes to the Dutch phase, then the Swedish phase, and then finally like the French phase. I think we could have a very similar part. We could start off with like the morning after phase, the morning phase, which we are going to get. Trust me, the Conservatives are going to be in mourning come Friday. Oh boy, we're going to get the morning phase, the the fighting phase. We might get the Farage phase. Who knows? But needs to say, could be extremely, very, very interesting. These Tory wars to come. I can tell you that now. Oh boy. But to echo that last comment we saw, um, you know, they need it as much as what a herd of slugs on your lettuce allotment. Honestly, it might not be this election that destroys. Well, it will be this election that just like damages significantly the Tory party. It could be in opposition where we see the complete and absolute destruction of the Tory party. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time. And of course, we'll catch you later at 9:30 when we go live. I've got a video to record tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but hey, I'll find something, I'm sure. So, whoa, bless me. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.